This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast revisiting television sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between. This week, Darkman.
Durant destroyed everything I loved. Everything that I was. And I summoned the will to go on, watching over his city, waiting for revenge as the world crumbled around me, leaving only the rich and the wretched.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast that just falls apart after 99 minutes. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
I'm really curious to know if this is Yum Yum or not.
That's a great interlude to our guests this week. We are joined by Rachel and Ryan from the Yum Yum podcast. Welcome to the show, guys and girls.
Thank you for having us.
Our pleasure to be here on Continuum Drag. I've been excited. I've been really keen to get on here to talk about whatever you guys want to throw our way. So very, very happy to be joining you for this one.
Unfortunately, it's for Darkman.
Yeah.
Can you believe it? You got to come on for the Darkman episode. I'm sure that was exactly what you hoped and dreamed of.
Well, I did do the Captain America, I get that. I know what Darkman is. I've heard the name. I know of Sam Raimi. Sure, it will be fun. I thought so, but we'll get there.
Yes, this week we are watching the failed pilot for Darkman. It was, of course, the TV spin-off of the Sam Raimi film. And I assume, has everyone seen the original Darkman film?
No.
Oh, really?
I asked, should I check it out? And then it was like, no, you don't have to. And then I thought, you know what? No. I'm not going to check it out to see what the pilot offers me, because I know we're all going to have, somebody's going to go, oh, in the movie, this. But I, on purpose, was like, you know what? No. This pilot, like most pilots, should stand on its own merits. So I, on purposely, withheld watching the Raimi film because I wanted to see what this would offer up. And boy, what a choice that was.
But we could still pick when they reused footage.
Yeah, you could really see when they
you could tell.
the film.
Rachel, you're not a Liam Neeson fan? You didn't watch the movie when you were growing up?
No, I don't even remember hearing about this movie.
Really?
No, I don't remember anything. I was just like, oh yeah, that sounds like a superhero name.
Yeah, I remember growing up with the film, at least, was always in the video rental store next to Dick Tracy and stuff like that, like those kind of iconic.
Yeah, that was the time period.
Video posts, video covers, and you look at it and go, oh, that looks fun. And then I never watched it.
Well, this is perfect. I'm really glad that neither of you have seen the film, because I'm really curious now what you thought of this, because it's been a while since I've seen the film, but as I was watching this pilot, it all kind of came back to me. So I'm very curious what happens if you have no recollection of what that film is about.
Well, it doesn't skimp on exposition.
Oh,
so
thank God. We need
so
that exposition.
I don't feel like I'm unclear on anything other than what the show was meant to be.
Yeah.
I know the lore.
Thanks, Darkman pilot. We know the lore
Can I point
now.
out one thing that's not clear? And I'm pretty sure in the movie, so obviously we're going to talk about it, he goes through a horrible disaster and he's sort of disfigured and burned. And in the movie, he has bandages put on, and as the movie goes on, these bandages through action and through the scenes sort of fall off, and then you get the reveal of what he looks like. But in this, he has his bandages on and he takes them off, but then he puts back on his old dirty bandages. I'm like, you can't just stop by a drugstore and get some new bandages? You put on one of those fancy faces, put on some clean ones.
Yeah. It's just a look. It's just iconic look. It's because
I
it's
suppose
Darkman.
so.
It's Darkman. You know what Darkman looks like because of those bandages. So we've got to have them, even if it doesn't make sense.
I'm just saying, for sanitary
just
purposes,
extra
you know?
literal grit.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give us a little background here around this pilot. It was financed by Universal as it aimed at going to series in the fall of 1992 on Fox was going to be the network, which makes sense, I think. And, of course, we've all watched it now, but for the listener, Liam Neeson was recast for the pilot. Obviously, Liam Neeson wasn't coming on board. But the villain, played by character actor Larry Drake, was the villain in the feature film, and so he decided to stick around, I guess. And he's like, "Oh, I'll see what happens with this pilot."
Yeah, I recognized him, and I without seeing the movie, I thought he must be from the film because I've seen that guy in movies. Like, iconically, he's Dr. Giggles in the famous film Dr. Giggles, which is a very, very, very fun film. If you want to see a campy, over-the-top horror movie that has medical-based murders, he's great. Like, he wraps around, like, what you call it, the blood pressure thing around somebody's neck and the cuff around their neck and squeezes them to death, and it's awesome. It's really fun. I would recommend that film. But I saw him, and I'm like, oh, he must be from the Darkman film. And I'm glad to hear that he was, because I looked at him and said, this guy's too good for this pilot.
I would agree. I'm going to argue that he's the best thing of this pilot.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. He's the only one who kind of knows what he's there to do. And of course, Sam Raimi is an EP on this, but I would care to wager he was not involved in any way, shape, or form.
No, I don't think so. I would love if Sam Raimi was on set seeing this, just tutting, just going, oh, what have I done? What have I done?
But Jordan, for you especially, there was someone involved that we know. The director of this was the director of a Man in Machine episode.
Oh, wow. That's a high pedigree.
He directed the episode No Pain, No Gain, which I believe was about Man in Machine team up with a cop who wants to kill himself because he's retiring.
Wow, I don't remember that at all.
I believe it ends with him killing himself.
Yeah. That was a funny one, I think.
At any rate, when this show failed to move forward, they didn't want to give up on Darkman. Universal really had their sights set on more Darkman. They really liked this 1990 film, and there was actually 2 direct-to-video sequels to Darkman in 95 and 96. I believe Larry Drake also appears in one of them.
Yeah. The second one, Durant Returns, I think it's called.
The Return of Durant.
Yeah.
I will say, I like the subtitle for the third one was just Die Darkman Die. It's a pretty good subtitle. Mm-hmm. And I will get to it in a second, everyone at home, I promise. But that one last little precursor before we talk about the episode. Jordan, can you name the other failed pilot that we watched that was also intended to be in the 1992 TV season?
A pilot?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you for a hint, and then you're going to say it was in 1992. Do you have any other hints?
No, I have no other hints for you.
That was in 1992? A pilot. I can't remember.
Rachel or Ryan, can you guess?
Was it the Red Dwarf pilot?
It was the Red Dwarf pilot.
Oh, no, and we just watched it.
Uh-huh.
Like weeks ago.
Weeks ago. Yeah.
Okay,
That's
before
funny.
we even do this then, as a pilot, as something that you're supposed to watch and say, I want to make more episodes of this, what fails more spectacularly, Darkman or Red Dwarf USA?
It's hard because I've seen the original Red Dwarf, so I know what the Red Dwarf pilot was trying to be. And even if I have seen the Darkman film, after viewing the Darkman pilot, I don't know what the show was supposed to be.
Right.
Like, I know what the character is, I know the lore, and I know that there's a foe, but I don't know after viewing this what the show is.
I think you're right, because yes, they do a lot of work in this to explain the backstory so the viewer catches up, explain who he is, what his sort of motivations are, but then you stop and you go, hold on, what is this show? And I think, and we'll talk about it, I think even the people making it realize that when they throw in sort of near the end all sort of like a montage of clips from the movie and things you've weirdly just seen in the episode. And I think they're just like, it's going to be something like this, maybe.
Yeah, and then they also have him having a speech where it's like, and people can come to me, and I'll stand up for the little guy against the scum. And I'm like, oh, so is this going to be a private eye detective show? Like, how does he work in the future of this series? Because I'm like, is this going to be like, say, I said this to Rachel last night. I'm like, could this have been like the series Angel, the spin-off of Buffy, where sexy vampire guy is private eye detective who helps people, and it involves supernatural dealings as well. But then you have to set that up in your pilot. That's just me guesstimating from the ending monologue, which just comes out of nowhere.
I mean, Darkman's pretty sexy in this.
They do really try to push it, that one scene. I liked it. I like that they're like, well, we'll talk about it. But I like that they're like, you know what? We need a love interest for this horribly scarred guy.
All right, well, let's get into it then, shall we, everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here is the IMDb summary for Darkman. a 30-minute unaired pilot based on the original Sam Raimi's 1990 Darkman movie.
That's not a synopsis.
That's the closest anyone could find to explaining what this was.
Yeah, that's an accurate description of it. I don't know what else I would say about it.
The pilot really is. That's what the film was, and I'm here now too.
It's based off that.
Yeah.
Some things happen.
Here's footage from the film.
Here's a lot of voiceover. You want some more voiceover?
Yeah.
Well, it's a good start because that's how it does start. It's in an alley, a very, very stylized alley with a lot of purple lighting for some reason. And he kind of lets us know about the skin technology, which is from the movie, is something that he's working on. Although I can't quite remember because it's been a long time since I've seen the movie, but they sort of retcon it a little bit for this show that he gets attacked, and I believe his fiance or wife in this dies in the explosion because they're looking for this skin technology, which I don't believe is the reason in the movie. I think it has something to do with like a land deal or something, and the skin technology just happens to be what he was working on. But I realize why they killed his wife in this and she doesn't die in the movie is because she is the love interest in the movie, and the person sort of like mourning him because she thinks he's dead. In this, they need to have, I'm assuming for later episodes, there to be some sort of like will they, won't they? So they're like, let's kill the wife, and then we'll have that with this this police detective.
I mean, also, they weren't going to get Frances McDormand back.
Oh,
Well, that's true.
yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. She would be in the Darkman film. It's interesting to think that, though, right, of the future of the series being a possible romance with this freaky monster man, because if the original film is it's a romance between an already existing couple, she thinks he's dead, then he's afraid to come back because he's a freakish monster.
Exactly.
That makes sense because it's like we, the audience, can buy that relationship rekindling, but it's like I'm thinking of episode 9 where they go on a dinner date and his face starts to melt and he's like, oh no, my face, and then she's wondering why is he going to the toilet all the time, like it's just, and then imagining them
comedy at that point.
yeah, and imagining them kissing and stuff, and it's just like I don't know.
Imagining the end of Deadpool.
Oh right,
The
right.
Hugh Jackman mask.
Yeah, but that again, to go to that, they're a pre-established couple, and that's the thrust of Deadpool is he's afraid to get back with her because he's a deformed freak. Here, could you imagine a series that's like Ross and Rachel, will they, won't they, but one of them's Darkman?
Rachel. Ryan walks home one day. He's scarred beyond recognition. Does he have to start redating you just to prove that you still like him?
Rachel? I'm right here. Answer the question. Would you find me yum yum?
To be fair, every 99 minutes you do change your face again.
Yeah. No, I think that's a selling point.
There you go. Rachel's on board.
That's true. If you could change your face, I mean, that is a benefit. It's like having a wig or something. You're really gonna change your look. I wanted to note, we talked a little bit about Frances McDormand not being in this, but this whole opening is done with intersplicing scenes from the original film for the explosion of his lab and kind of like how it all comes together with like they've now kind of cut out Liam Neeson and cut in this new actor into sequences.
What? You mean that they didn't film that for this pilot?
No, Rachel, they
Can you
didn't film
believe
this
it?
for this pilot. They couldn't afford
Can you
an
tell the parts
explosion.
with style from the parts without style? That's the big question.
Yeah,
I'll give it though to the director. I don't think he did a particularly good job, but I can tell he was trying. It looks like he watched the movie the night before and was like, okay, I can do this. I can do these very specific stylized techniques, but they don't really work, and it's very noticeable when they cut to the movie, and you can see that discrepancy.
Oh yeah, as a director, could you and a TV director, could you imagine being given the monumental task of trying to replicate Raimi, one of the most visually iconic directors of that era?
I thought the same thing. I was like, what a fool's errand for this poor man. This was just a paycheck for sure. He's like, well, I'll give it my best shot. Here's what I wanted to ask though, because in the shots they show of the thing exploding, and the video quality you watched was very bad, but I'm almost positive, because in this world, this version of Darkman, his wife is dead, died in the explosion, and he keeps looking at a photo of her. Is he still looking at a photo of Frances McDormand?
I couldn't tell. I thought the woman's hair was dark-haired, and I'm usually used to her with like blonde hair, so I'm not too sure.
Fair enough. I just kept wondering. I'm like, have they just kept her photo in this, and has she approved of it?
I was going to say, unrelated, it reminded me of something that I always thought was funny when I watched Darkman when I was a kid, when it first came out. And that explosion in the movie is obviously a big thing. It's his turning point as a character. But right after he's exploded, he's like shot through the air and into a lake where people, they find him, and he's saved by doctors, and he's all sort of bound up and stuff. And I remember at one point the doctor's like, well, we don't know who he is, just some guy that died in an explosion. I remember even as a kid being like, I don't know, maybe the guy who died in the explosion down the street. How many explosions could there possibly have been where there's a burn victim? You know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I had some questions too, because as they say, he's rescued from this. He's recovers. This is the plot of the movie and the TV shows. He's recovered. He's badly burned, and all his nerves are severed in his body, so he can no longer feel pain. But he also seems to be superhumanly strong.
yeah.
From
Yeah.
the
He's-
burning.
And he can get shot and not die.
Yeah,
He doesn't bleed out.
yeah, you cannot feel pain. Yeah, it's one of those.
Not only are his nerve endings destroyed, his arteries are all cauterized in some way.
Oh god.
I think in the movie they sort of play it up that his emotions have been messed up as well, and so when he sees sort of like, not like Incredible Hulk, but there's like a rage issue where his endorphins go real high, and that he I don't know, somehow that affects his strength. I for some reason I remember it being okay with it in the movie, being like, all right, I'll allow it. And this, it seems like, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it would be kind of related to, from what I know of Darkman from this, and from my basic understanding of the movie, it comes across as a kind of callback to something like Phantom of the Opera or old Universal monster things, in which sometimes they didn't necessarily have to have super strength. Like, why can the Invisible Man do stuff like he does in the old movie? But you just accept it because they're no longer human in the way we are. So you just kind of nod along going, yeah, sure, I guess that can happen.
Yeah, that's probably the case. I mean, I think that was some of Raimi's inspiration for the original version. It was just so funny. After like a good 5 to 7 minutes of pure exposition about how this happened, I was just like, "Are you not going to tell me why he's so strong?" Also, what I also enjoyed is right off the bat here. There's also another. I guess it's it's another retcon that's happened. His wife is now dead, but the other retcon is Darkman appears to live in some sort of semi-apocalyptic dystopia now.
It's a, what did they say it was? It used to be like a planetarium or something?
I just remember him saying, "My lair."
My lair.
He wandered into my lair.
But he also talks about how there's like this overclass running the city, and we get wide shots of a city with just explosions happening all over it, and that there's like most of the people live like homelessly on the ground. I don't remember that from the movie at all. I don't remember that.
I saw that and I went, is that a shot from the opening of Blade Runner? Because there's that shot at the opening of Blade Runner, the cityscape, and there's that tower that's just like shooting balls of flame out of it. And I couldn't tell with the video quality, but I'm like, I mean, they could just reuse footage from other things if they wanted to.
Yeah, I was just like, okay, this is just a stylistic version of LA or Detroit, right?
It's scummy.
And that must be the case, because I was also very confused by it. I'm like, I guess we're in some sort of weird dystopia as well. And this is really represented by Darkman. He's walking through the streets. He like pushes a cart, much like the movie. He appears to be like someone who lives on the street, and he sees a black kid doing spray painting on a wall, and Darkman just gives this kid so much shit for no reason.
Well, he spells evil wrong. That's
right,
enough.
with an O. He spells evil with an O, and Darkman is beyond furious. So mad he crushes the spray paint can in his hand till it explodes.
Did you see the little fun effect though? It was almost like a like early silly Spielbergian sort of like gag where it's like he like crushes the spray paint and then it sprays all over the kid, and then when the kid walks away, his shape is on the wall because there's been so much spray paint on him. And I was like, what a weird tonal decision for that scene.
Yeah, I agreed. But then also, I don't know, the kid in the scene set themselves up as a comedic thing, talking about how they're a super genius and you should trust me. And Darkman's like, you're a child. So that kind of slapsticky thing. Again, I was looking at that going, oh, I'm sure this would work in the Raimi movie because he's always got that corny, over-the-top, campy sense of humor in otherwise pretty dark and brutal genres and films. Like the Evil Dead films are really funny, but they're also like grotesque and weird. And I'm sure that kind of silly spray paint gag would work there. But here you're like, it's not been funny until now, and it's been very serious, and now it's just like,
I would
it's
say
funny.
that's still not that funny.
No,
So I think you mislabeled it there.
I don't know.
That's just me.
I think Sam Raimi has that kind of corny thing, like Spider-Man, where the board of executives get turned into like skeletons when Green Goblin bombs them, and that's very silly, but it's very funny.
Yeah.
But it's corny, and I
We
think
know
this...
that this idea works in the movie because the movie's fairly well liked.
and not this pilot.
No,
Shock.
there's a reason that it is an unaired pilot.
I want to talk a little more about this kid because what we'll do is we won't this pilot's so disjointed it doesn't really matter, but like he'll leave this kid after yelling at him in the alley, and then like 15 minutes later he'll walk back through this alley for no apparent reason to talk to this kid again. And it's my favorite part is when we meet him, he's yelling at the kid for spelling evil wrong because the kid spells it with an O instead of an I. And Darkman bumps into the kid. The kid tries to like warn him about Durant, and Darkman just gets all pissy again. And then Darkman looks in a puddle, sees the reflection of the graffiti, and realizes the kid wrote love backwards on a wall. But Darkman has to look up at the graffiti, back in the puddle, back up to the graffiti again, then back. It takes him like 7 tries to figure out what he's seeing here. And he's like, oh, he wrote love backwards.
Well, the kid's a super genius, and Darkman isn't, so he needs a bit of time to figure that out.
I also got so annoyed because I was just like, what is the angles of this situation that you are seeing a wall reflected in the ground, but it's like...
It's high up, Rach.
But they're in the streets.
I guess my question is, what does this moment even mean? Like in
Fucking
the episode,
nothing. These-
like when it happens, like what does it mean?
This is clearly them being like, hey, what if he had a kid sidekick? What if
Yeah.
that was the case? And what if that kid sidekick was a genius?
Oh, it works
Yeah.
so well for RoboCop, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're going for that sort of like Batman and Robin thing, but it's just weird that they would even have tried this in the pilot, or at least done it so clumsily. Because yeah, you're like, oh, the kid wrote love, so are they in love? Is he adopting this child? I don't understand, but sure. Now he's been accepted by Darkman. That's all it takes. Backwards graffiti.
They should have committed to having, if he had a Robin, they should have committed to having like another deformed creature, like superpowered weirdo as his Robin, right? Like, you know, and call them something freaky, because whenever you have these, what were once, I imagine this was, Darkman was probably like an R-rated movie or a very adult kind, I don't know, but you get stuff like this in RoboCop, and then they try to kidsify them. Like, look, don't you want them with a little kid? And no one does. No one likes that. Like, no one enjoys that unless you make them like a freaky creature or like hurt, like really get violent or whatever.
So what do we think the creepy child would be? Is he the opposite of Darkman? So Darkman's like a burn victim, and he's like a kid with too much skin?
He's light boy, in which he illuminates too brightly. So he's just walking around as this beam of light, and he's blinding people. And he has to wear bandages over his skin so he doesn't like blind people all the time. There you go. And he looks like a mummy.
Right.
Yeah,
and he's
there
like,
you go.
hey, Darkman, do you have any clean bandages? And he's like, no, only dirty ones.
The more dirty they are, the more they block out the light, kid.
The other thing the pilot introduces for the series is that Darkman will have a secret lair in an abandoned old planetarium. And here, for some reason, he also has a very high-tech computer system with a flesh mask fabricator, so he can just build whatever flesh mask. Like, the technology level to, like, the squalor he's living in is just, like, so wild.
Hey, I got a question, though. So he's figured out, and this is kind of a bit of a plot point, because obviously it adds some tension to scenes where, you know, he's disguising himself, but he only has so long to do that, adding a bit of a clock on scenes. And they're going to play with that. I think it's not a bad concept for a TV show. You know, every episode he looks different because he's doing some sort of different mission or whatever. But when, you know, we're going to go to one really quickly where he puts on this face. But what I don't understand is he goes there and almost immediately he starts bubbling. And I was like, was it just a really long commute, or did he just wait till he was like, oh, I'm just going to watch one more
He had
YouTube video.
terrible timing, I think, was the case.
He took too long on the magic trick, and
Right.
and he's spaced out. What I thought you were going to ask is, he used his own face. That's what he says, right? Like, didn't he say, like, for this, he's like,
Yeah.
I'm going to use my own face, because you have to have the actor in every episode.
Yeah.
Right?
He can make any face he wants, and in this episode, he chooses 3 times to make his own face.
And that's another thing with the show, right? You go, okay, so he's going to transform into other people, but for practicality's sense, on a TV show level, you need to have a lead actor in every episode. You can't have every episode, it's like the main character's played by every different people. That's why, like, Quantum Leap, they came up with the rule, like, we, the audience, will always see Scott Bakula. Everyone else in the show will see another character. And it makes sense as, a TV show production. You have to have a lead actor to consistently play. But if you have this Darkman, I mean, they have to come up with excuses for why he's going to keep using this lead actor's face all the time. And in this episode, they don't even bother. They're like, I like my face. It's like, okay, great.
He puts it on, and then he puts on like a little domino mask on top.
Yeah.
I didn't even get that far because I was just like, okay, they said 99 minutes of sunlight, but he only ever goes out at night.
He is Darkman.
You're right. I thought that too. I'm just like, well, there's no sunlight, so his face should be good for a little longer.
Yeah,
right?
like his face should be good for like the next 10 hours because he's never outside during the day. I don't think there's a single scene
In day.
that's in daylight
No, he's Darkman.
in this pilot. And I'm like, yeah, he's Darkman, but like you specifically say sunlight.
Well, that's the thing. You say that, but...
And there's no sunlight.
Well, there is sunlight in the footage used from the film. That's it. No, that's literally it. Like, and it highlights the fault of this episode, where it even says in the episode daylight. So you're thinking, oh well, they're going to show the pressures of the. No, there's no delineation.
No.
It's just a sentence said.
The evil dude is out for dinner.
Yeah,
It's so
At
funny
night.
because this is the closest they come to a plot. This episode is Darkman makes his face and he's just like, so I'm finally going to do what I should have done all along. I'm going to go kill Durant. And you're like, okay, the plot's getting rolling. Here we go. And then we hard cut to a nightclub where Durant's at. And Darkman, which first of all, don't go kill the man who killed you in your own face. They're going to see you coming. But to cover that up, he dresses exactly like Tuxedo Mask from the Sailor Moon series.
I thought so too.
Exactly like Tuxedo Mask from Sailor Moon series. And I was just like, okay, this is weird, but I'll go with it. And he goes in the club, and his plan is, I will just do magic tricks for people at the club until Durant sees me doing magic tricks and calls me to his table to do a magic trick for him. This is his whole plan.
To be fair, it's
Yeah.
been well established that Durant loves magic. That has not been established.
No, I was going to say that should have been established, but that means the pilot would have to establish actual character.
Anything?
No, actual character traits instead of character background. Like, if this gangster guy was a guy that walked around and he had a deck of cards and he was doing, like, magic tricks himself, that would make it believable that he would want this. Like, that's a little touch, but they don't have time for that. They have time to show a guy just doing, like, flips and, like, flexing his muscles to let us know that Darkman's just going to kick him in the groin real hard. That's what they got time for.
No, Darkman is the one that gets kicked
Oh,
in
was
the
he?
groin because he has no nerve endings.
Oh, right.
It's like, no, don't shoot him. We have a martial arts guy.
Oh, right.
He does all of that to just go up, and we get the in between the legs shot of
Right.
Darkman being kicked in the groin.
And he doesn't react. Okay.
And he doesn't react, and haha, that's meant to be funny?
Well, it is, because as a guy with genitals on the outside, I can't relate to Darkman, because when I've been kicked in the groin, it really hurts. So that's what makes Darkman a hero, because as a guy, I would I would love to have the power not to
I
get
think they
hurt in
missed
the
a
groin.
turn, though. Later on in the scene where Detective lady, I don't know what her name is, when she gets shot apparently in the arm, and he's fixing her, and then there's like a scene where it's like, you know, will they, won't they? She should also reach down and touch his groin, and then again he should be like, I can't feel anything.
Yeah. What a tragedy that is, huh? Actually, it's a monkey's paw curse. Like, yeah, it's great not to feel pain in the groin, but he can't.
You just
feel
asked for
pleasure
it. You
either.
literally just asked for that power.
Yeah, but it's monkey. That's what I'm saying. It's a monkey's paw. Now I realize the dark underbelly of it, which is I also can't feel pleasure from it. I don't know. It's an awful curse that Darkman has.
Now you're getting into the character. What a tragic figure he is.
But I mean, like, gun to your head, which one are you choosing? You're choosing not to feel anything, right?
Of course. It's hard to feel things these days anyway. Just in physical, emotional sense.
I know. If you do that, it might change my answer to the earlier question about you coming back to form.
I love when he goes to the table to do his magic trick. He like materializes a like little tiny wooden coffin in his hand and hands it to Durant. And he's just like, why don't you open up that coffin and see what's inside? And Durant's immediately like, here, my henchman, why don't you do it? Because, I don't know this guy.
No. Well, in what version did he think that this was actually going to work? Where the head of an evil organization was just going to be like, yeah, I'm going to open up this mysterious object that was handed to me by a magician that looks like a Sailor Moon character. This looks great.
Well, if Darkman was just level-headed and cool about it, it could work. But it's not even just the guy. Durant hands it off. Durant holds it for a while, and he, as the magician, is like, please, open it. Please. Oh, desperate. Too desperate. And then he hands it off to the flunky, and then he's like, no, it's for you. I'm obviously wanting to kill you. Because I'm stupid.
Idea, because as we're ruining it, it's as soon as you open up the little coffin, a little man comes out that shoots like a dart, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right into your forehead.
Right into your forehead, which, great. That works real well. But, I don't know, it's like, it only has one shot. You think he would have done anything? He could have done, even like if Durant was just playing with the coffin, I'm like, stab him right now. Do something. Mm-hmm. He's just sitting there. But he's like, no, I decided on mini coffin man with blow dart gun thing. That's what I'm going with.
You could have just shot him right there.
Yeah.
He could have he himself as Darkman, when passing it over to Durant, he could have opened it facing Durant to shoot him with the dart anyway. Like,
like a magic trick.
But no, we have to make sure Durant's going to be the overarching villain in this series. So again, if you
can't die in the pilot.
If you imagine this show, it would have been every episode Durant just somehow doesn't get killed. And that would be very boring. That's why in a movie, which this existed in, you kill Durant at the end because it's satisfying. But if you stretch this out over who knows how long they wanted this to be, could you imagine how frustrating it would be? It would be Saturday morning cartoon level frustrating.
What I did like is that as soon as his plan fails, Darkman just like tears his face off and flips the table over. He has no. I think this is a thing in the movie where he has no rage control, but in the TV show, he just comes off as like a petulant child perpetually.
Yeah, he looks stupid. Just constantly stupid. And he just rips his face off and starts screaming, and everyone's just like, what the hell is this?
He's meant to be smart enough that he can create this synthetic skin in the first place in this laboratory and then recreate his laboratory in a kind of underground lair.
I mean, yeah.
But he can't figure out that Durant isn't going to open a coffin.
No, it's his flaw.
It's weird though here. Right now, after you mentioned it before, then the martial arts expert that Durant apparently has on hire at all times, he has a little fight with Darkman, kicks him in the groin, it doesn't work. Darkman throws him really far, and then they open fire and shoot 8,000 bullets at Darkman, and we sort of get a hard cut to the detective when we're introducing her as she looks through a big hole in the wall and was like, how could he have possibly made it through it? And as if she's saying what the viewers at home would be saying. And I was like, yeah, how did he make it through that? Is it just that he got shot a million times and doesn't feel it? I'm like, he would still be dead from the bullets, whether he felt them or not.
Yeah, and the police, I don't know how, unless in this universe, Darkman is already an established avenging hero, but it doesn't seem that way to me.
They call him by his name.
Well, they say this dark.
They do call him by his name.
But they do. No, they say it in this way where it's like whoever this Darkman is that saved the day. But they walk into a crime scene of a well-known gang who have been brutally killed, and they just assume, oh, one person must have done this. Why don't they assume what you would naturally? This was a gangland attack, two gangs, but they somehow know one guy.
I think it's because there was only one mini coffin.
Oh, there you go.
I think it's because they're desperate to only have everyone have a little character scene. So this is where they introduce the other going to be lead character of the show, Officer Jenny. And it's so funny because she's looking around and her partner's with her, and her partner's just there to be helpfully say out loud. It's like, hey, Officer Jenny, you have that vendetta against Durant too. You should team up with Darkman. And she's just like, no, I play it by the book. I don't play it like Darkman. And then she turns around and says, hey, did you notice that Vincenzo, one of Durant's guys, followed Darkman out of here last night? And I'm just like, Officer Jenny, how would you have any of this information? But okay. And this is so funny because it just gets us to Darkman digging a grave.
And singing.
He's killed this Vincenzo man. And he's like, I've got a plan to steal your face. It's so weird. And
before
then
we get
Jenny
to that,
just shows up.
I would like to point out that, people who are hanging out at a nightclub with an evil gang, very cooperative witnesses.
Oh, that was very funny too. Yeah. Yes.
So I think that that's how she got her information. She just went up to that go-go dancer that has that weird camera flashlight thing, and she was just like, oh, yeah.
It was Darkman. One detail about the club before we leave it that I really found funny, to let you know that it was like, that this show is trying to evoke the kind of 1920s and 30s in aesthetics in some minor way, is on the roof. There's just these giant playing cards on the roof. And I found that really funny because it's like you only really see it visible in like one shot. And I thought, wow, they put a lot of effort to show minorly in one brief shot the roof of this club that we'll never see again. In this, I can't help but think oh, if you had a real idea there, wouldn't it be funny if Darkman threw somebody up and made them get hit by that deck of cards up there or something silly? I don't know. I'm trying to think of things you could do, but nope, we got to have Darkman sing to a guy in the graveyard.
Those got to be returned to the prop shop afterwards, so we're not throwing anyone through them.
Yeah, we're not having anyone thrown at it or it falling down and hitting somebody on the head. No, we can't do that.
No.
We're not allowed to do that.
No.
And structurally, I'm not saying this would make this a good pilot, but you would think this scene would be at the end, if not near the end of the episode. They're building up to introduce the characters, what the world is, and then at the end of the episode, you're going to get, as I would assume in every episode, Darkman puts on some sort of face and tries to kill Durant in some way, and then Durant gets away like a cartoon villain. I know, again, not very good, but you'd assume that's kind of would be the structure, but they've decided to do big voiceover, montage, then this scene,
Climax.
and then you're going to get climax. Now you're going to get maybe 15 more minutes of Darkman walking around giving voiceover.
Yeah, it's him digging a grave for this Vincenzo character we've never met, because he's sort of talking to him, singing to him. He's like, oh, I'm going to steal your face and go kill Durant a second time. And it's very funny because he's digging this grave and he's just like, oh, but I better put on my grave digging face. And he puts back on his own face to dig the grave. And it's mostly just so when Officer Jenny, who somehow finds him miraculously in the middle of nowhere, can be not realize he's Darkman at first, at least until he breaks the handcuffs she puts on him.
Oh, God. Yeah, the singing scene was that moment when I was watching this going, oh, so the Raimi film must have been a comedy and they're trying to evoke that here because that singing is supposed to be humorous in some fashion. And then I was thinking, God, could you I'm just trying to think what they were going to do with this series even more if they were going to try and make it a comedy series as well, because it doesn't work as a crime series or mob series yet. These are the two things that are prevalent to kick off with. And then it's oh, but could you imagine the romance and the comedy aspects trying to be thrown in too? It just kind of threw me for a loop because, that moment happens where he's singing and I'm just thinking, oh, I'm supposed to find this character kind of endearing enough to enjoy him being funny. I don't.
And I'll give. I can't really even blame it on the actor because I think he doesn't. I don't think he knows what he's supposed to be doing here because his performance is kind of all over the place. And this scene in particular, it's kind of played for laughs and he's being sarcastic for some reason. But then other scenes, he's so tortured. And I'm it just doesn't gel in any way. But I don't know if it's so much the actor's fault. I think he's doing the best with what he has, but the material is just so bad.
Yeah,
No.
I don't think anybody knows what they're doing.
No, it all comes down to the production of this, what the goal was, because actors can only do so much, and I have no problem with anyone's performance really in this episode. There's people like Larry Drake who are better, but even he does nothing, Larry Drake. I mean, we say he's better, but he just does nothing, so... I mean...
he sits at a table and he walks down an alley later on, so I think he's doing plenty.
But yeah, thank you. But no, the actors are doing fine enough work. But it's just about the goal and the purpose of what what the pilot was trying to do, and we're trying to be faithful to the film, but also we're doing our own thing, but also this, and they run out of time to actually achieve one thing, let alone all of those things.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like they're doing like when she catches him, he escapes the handcuffs and kind of offers a team up. At which, okay, it's again she states, "I'm a good cop. I don't work with people like you." And then it cuts from that scene just randomly to an alley where Darkman's like, "And then I watched her for a while." And in the alley, Durant's just standing with a gun, shoots her in the arm, and like Darkman has to swoop in and like scoop her up in his arms so they can run off and do a romance scene together where he like bandages her wound and he just like gives the most self-pitying monologue that's just like the least likable character you've ever met. And it's like oh, and this is the sequence where we're gonna learn this will also have a lot of romance in it, apparently.
Yeah, it was around this point where I was like, is this a pilot or a kind of show reel for the whole season?
Yeah. Well, and especially when you get to the very end when you have the montage, it really is, what kind of pilot is this? Is this kind of, it's supposed to be its own thing, or is it one of those pilots that's just pitching it as, this is kind of what the show is going to be, but even then, I don't know what the show is.
It feels more like a pitch than a pilot.
Yeah, I would agree, because after this like romance scene, which is like kind of, I guess it's trying to show you, it's like there will be a little something between these two characters, it hard cuts to a long montage of like the action sequences from the movie, where I wouldn't even have to get into. I'm just like, well, now I'm just watching the movie for 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just the movie, and it stands out because, like we said, it looks better. There's more like stunts, and it's in daytime, some of it, and Durant looks significantly different for some reason. Like, this wasn't that long after the Darkman film, was it?
2 years, so not that long, no.
Not that long, but I guess, like, he just looks different. And then also, they have the classic moment where I go, why didn't you do this in the pilot, you fools? Where they show a shot from the movie where Darkman is pretending to be Durant right in front of Durant. And, like, that would have been fun. They didn't do anything fun with the Darkman power in this pilot.
That's what's so funny is when they show this montage, you see these scenes where he has different faces on, and you're like, oh, right, that was what was so cool about the movie, and you have done none of that in the pilot. And, like, the remainder of the pilot is basically going to be just clips from the movie, and eventually the montage becomes clips from the movie combined with clips from the show you've already watched, like the last hilarious 20 minutes, and like it just ends in a title treatment for Darkman, and I was just like 22 minutes have passed. I don't know what I was supposed to get out of that.
Yeah, and his monologue during this montaging thing, like I said, he starts talking about things like. And it's basically Darkman, the character, saying, and this is what the show is going to be. But it doesn't add up with anything we've just watched. And it still doesn't clarify what would, say if this was picked up, what would an actual individual episode of this show be? There's so many great series that have been adapted from movies that did it. Like, at the same time this came out, the Highlander TV show came out as well. And that show went for 100 plus episodes. And they got the idea from the movie and made it work as a week-to-week TV show because it's an interesting idea. What if you had an immortal character and you introduce this fantasy setting, and each week he has to take on another weird immortal freak and find out their deal, and that works as a show. But then you get this Darkman thing, and it's like, well, from what I gather, this seems like it's more of it's a cool premise about a guy who can shapeshift, but it's always in service of him being this tragic character piece. And you can do that it feels like, well, that worked for like a 90-minute long movie in which he gets his revenge, he finally gets back with his wife, and he finds some solace, or he becomes like embittered and becomes more of an anti-hero monster type deal, whichever one the movie goes with. But here you go, well, what's episode 4 of this show supposed to be? Like, does he get an office and he's a PI now and he's helping people with his monster face? I don't know what this is. That's
the big question. I think you've nailed it on the head. It's like there's no clear concept of what the week to week, what's an episode of this like. Like, I would guess, like you're saying, it's him getting a case every week he needs to solve with his kid genius partner, and then like they occasionally interface with Officer Jenny for like information they need. But I couldn't tell you for sure because this pilot presents no opinion as to what as far as they're concerned, could be anything you want.
I think because similar to we mentioned Red Dwarf USA at the beginning of this, in a similar way, that didn't feel like a pilot as much as a proof of concept, as something you would see internally that was selling more of, here's the characters, here's the kind of tone, here's what it's going to look like, this is the world. Do you want to maybe make a pilot out of this? And that's what this kind of felt like. And I can't tell if it was decided when they went to camera, this is what we're going to do. We're going to shoot this kind of one sequence of his bubbling skin, and there's going to be we'll introduce a couple characters, then we'll just add in some footage, or if it was something that they filmed and went, this is such a mess, let's just stick in existing footage so we can, at least get to 22 minutes. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about the history of making this, but either way, there's no way you'd watch this and say, this should have been on TV. Like, there's a reason it never aired, because there's no way, it's just, no one would ever watch this on TV.
At least with the Red Dwarf pilot, you could understand, oh, well, I know it's going to be a sci-fi comedy show. Okay, there you go. That's like, where characters are going to get in that kind of sitcom banter where this one doesn't like the other one. There you go. That's enough. But here, I looked at it and go, yeah, but what does this have to do with Darkman? Why isn't this just a film noir show at all? Like, what does having the melty face that you can change add to this at all? Other than we're adapting a property because we want to milk it for money.
Yeah, even when I looked at the credits for it, like with the Red Dwarf trailer, at least I could tell that the guy who wrote it clearly liked the original and was trying to turn it into something, Americanized it, and, there was at least a vision behind that. Like, everyone involved, like the writer, the director, everyone seemed to be for hire, so I couldn't quite pinpoint who even was just like, this is a great idea, I think I can turn it into something. And I wonder if it is just the studio was like, we've got this property, could it be a TV show? And they just like, you two, can you do so? And they're like, I don't know. Like, it just doesn't feel like anyone showed up with a clear idea of what to do. They're just like, so you want the movie, but it's on TV? It might look like this if you want.
Well, and I think anytime you have a voiceover and clips from a pre-existing entity, it's probably not a good sign.
No, not at all. And another aspect that makes this difficult too, to compare it to counterparts at the time, obviously comic book things were booming at this time. We had the Batman movies, then we got the Batman animated shows and the Superman animated show. And
Shadow, Phantom.
Spawn at some point as well had and then the Tick for comedy. And you look at it and go, oh, all of those things, a lot of those things at least, had pre-existing material that they could kind of spin into something more. So like the Batman animated series has how many decades of comics that it can turn into episodes. Darkman, it's like an original thing that the movie came up with. Like, Darkman wasn't a pre-existing character before the film, right? It's just the film.
No, this is Sam Raimi was unable to get the rights to the Shadow to make a film, so he took the Shadow's concepts and combined them with kind of the Universal movie monsters concepts to come up with this new sort of superhero-y character.
But still, that limits what, like, even if you made a show, it's like, of this ilk of those type of counterparts, it has nothing to adapt from, so it's going to just have to keep spinning its own thing. And again, what it's spinning from is just a really well-made movie, an individual movie. And maybe this movie doesn't have enough legs to spin into a series like Highlander did, for instance.
I mean, clearly it did not. Well, we should probably rate this at some point, but did you guys have any final thoughts, Rachel, Ryan, any little pieces you didn't get to cover while we were going over the episode? We kind of flew through it, but it's such a mess of an episode that it's hard to go coherently through it anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't have any coherency, so you can't even try and bring it to it.
No.
Like Darkman's face itself, no coherency.
Do you guys remember, though, when the kids spray painted evil on the wall, and then we got the reveal that it said love?
Yeah.
Remember that? That was
I remember
good.
that.
Mm.
I pointed
Yeah.
and I just said, he's a super genius, that kid.
Do you remember the point, though, where he puts his fake face on, and then he waits 98 minutes, and then drives over to the restaurant, and then gives the guy a little coffin? Remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. I also thought it was really funny that in one of his monologues, he's just like, yeah, and this Vincenzo, or whichever one it was, is like Durant's right-hand man, and he's a big deal, and then that character proceeds to be nothing except for a guy he's burying because he killed him off screen or whatever. And it's like, why did you even introduce him as a character? Like, why does it even matter?
what should have been the second scene of the show, where getting ready to go to the thing where he dresses up as Vincenzo, is for some reason the third scene after the climax is him coming up with an actual plan. It's such a bizarre piece of work.
Yeah, it's such a bizarre piece of work. And again, if you made this into and even then, they kneecap them because even I know in the Darkman movie, Durant has like really fun right-hand man and henchman people that if you made into a TV show, they could be the villain that week instead of Durant, where you like, oh, I'm having to fight against one of Durant's many tendrils of his crime organization. But here they're just like, yeah, and then there's this guy, and then I killed him I took care of him off screen, and he had no character. Like even I know that Darkman's
but maybe
the
he was
villains
gonna
had personality.
take Vincenzo's place.
No, he was just too busy singing.
I think that was the idea that they never quite got around to doing.
Nah, because Jenny interrupted the scene. Ugh, that officer Jenny.
But do you remember when the kid said to Darkman, hey, Darkman, I'm just like you, but I'm dark on the inside? Mm-hmm. Remember that?
Yeah.
My note was, this is very 90s.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I did want to hear about his internal scars.
Yeah, he was like, hey, Darkman, by the way, I'm on the street because I was molested. I was like, ooh, Darkman, you just got really dark.
Man. I thought when they went into the alleyway, it reminded me of Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, where they would have like their purpley, greeny, neon lit, this is the underbelly of Gotham, and Robin follows Batgirl and she rides a motorcycle. And it's just so silly and
Lots
very
of neon.
90s silly.
Well, how about we rate this pilot? Rachel, Ryan, typically we do this out of 10 stars, sort of IMDb movie scale. Why don't we start with the two of you? Rachel, what do you think? Out of a 10, a possible 10, what would you rate this? And you could just it doesn't have to be critical. It can be on your enjoyment level, but it's
out of 10
totally
melting faces.
How many melting faces?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think I can do it out of 10. Because Ryan has decreed that there is only one rating scale.
Oh, it's yum yum, isn't it, Rachel?
It's a yum. I give it a 1 out of 10.
Wow. 1 out of 10, really? Wow. I mean, look, 10 is for something special. And this was very special.
Typically, that's how it works.
Yeah, but knock the 0 off 10, it's a 1. There's just nothing here. It's not good at, it's not so bad that it's funny enough either. Because most of the time you're just sitting there watching disparate elements and a guy just talk incessantly about nothing, really.
I would like to share that at a certain point in the episode, I tried to time how much of it was voiceover, and then I gave up because I got bored of even doing that.
There was so little to hold your attention. Jordan, what do you think out of 10?
I like the point where he got kicked in the groin. So 1 point, 1 out of 10.
I agree. Groin, man gets hit in groin, 1 point. This is a sweep. This is a 4-person, 1 sweep. This is a first for sure.
Yeah.
You make a good point, though. On the yum yum scale, are we all going to do the yum yum scale real quick?
Yeah, so on our
sure.
show, we rate things yum meaning bad or yum yum being good. I give it a yum.
Obviously, I think everybody can tell that's what that scale is.
It's a yum.
I already gave my yum.
So 4 yums, which means 2 yum yums. Okay, wow. we
Oh,
all
it's
liked
double
it.
yum yum. Rachel, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we've teased it a little bit, but you're on the podcast, Yum Yum Podcast. You guys want to tell our listeners all about it? I think they might enjoy your show.
We are a science fiction rewatch podcast. We are currently making our way through the 90s classic Babylon 5, but we started out with Star Trek Discovery.
Which is where
which
yum
is-
yum came from. What a line.
I was just going to say, which is also a piece of trash like Darkman.
No. They said yum yum one time, and we loved it so much we named ourselves after it. But yeah,
We loved it so much.
we go over some TV shows, one episode at a time of a thing, rewatching it, giving our thoughts on it. We've had you guys on for an episode of Babylon 5 at one point with everybody's favorite actor, Walter Koenig, appeared in that episode, which was...
Yes, that's right. That's a good place for people to
What was
start.
that alien race called again?
Which one?
His alien. He was an alien, wasn't he?
No,
or
he
just
was a
he was a
human.
psychic.
He was a psychic.
He was a psychic
Yeah.
human.
He was a psychic
right.
human. He was like a little Nazi cop. And
Jordan
he
was,
awesome.
very busy becoming that episode. He couldn't have time to pay attention.
Yeah. Too busy becoming. And it's we're on just your usual podcast hosting sites of choice under Yum Yum Podcasts. So people, you can check us out. We like to have some. Sometimes we have that overlap with you guys at Continuum Drag, where sometimes we're like, hey, look, this actor in Babylon 5 was in Tech War. Well, that's fun. Or things of
That's
that
true.
nature.
Babylon 5 seems to just have every actor from all of these shows. Like they all like combined together to form a super band that was called Babylon 5.
Yeah, it is true, and and a lot of Murder, She Wrote actors as well just appear every now and then because the creator of Babylon 5 worked on a season of Murder, She Wrote. So he was like, let's keep bringing these actors I worked with in because why not? They're good.
I love that crossover. That's my favorite. Well, that about wraps up for this episode, I guess. So, a listener at home, you can email us, continuumdrag@gmail.com, if you have any thoughts on Darkman or anything else, as always. And on Instagram and Twitter, we'll have some clips from the Darkman pilot, so you don't have to watch it. I am making a promise. I will not use any clips from the Darkman film. You'll only see fresh, new Darkman pilot material.
Do you think there's enough to actually cut? There's only like him doing a voiceover, and then it's mostly explosions from the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, someone's going to get hit in the groin, I'll tell you that much.
The quality, as we mentioned, is fairly poor.
Oh,
so...
Continuum Drag doesn't care about that. They show clips from some shows that have like 1 pixel, so it's fine.
Okay.
This is definitely going to be some low quality stuff. I've started going through it, and I'm really having to pick and choose which ones are like the most clear of a very hazy video quality.
I know. I feel like the shots of Lady Cop's back are some of the clearest ones that we get.
We had to make it clear for the guys watching.
I was just like, okay, they cared about that one.
Oh, another thing I want to point out just before we wrap up. Only 3 of the actors are credited in this.
I saw
and
that.
I find that hilarious because I wanted to know who some of these other people were, like who the little boy was or who anyone was, even the other cop. And it's like, no, they're not allowed to have names.
Yeah, no, the little boy saw it and says, "Don't put my name on this." Little boy's like, "Nah, thanks. I'm good."
And that little boy then grew up to be John Boyega. There you go. Famous actor. He just was like, please don't let them find out about my Darkman history.
Oh, imagine if that were true. That'd be amazing. Although I did recognize that kid. I think he was on stuff in the 90s.
Yeah.
I don't remember if I said it, so I'll say it now. Our Instagram and Twitter handle is @ContinuumDrag, so you can find everything related to this there. But that about wraps it up. So, Rachel, Ryan, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it was so much fun. Jordan, I'll see you next week. And listeners, I will also see you next week. I'm so confused these days. I can't get the end of this podcast right.
We've never done this before.
Goodbye, everybody.
Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario. Theme music by James Rex Seidler. Produced by Jordan Dullock and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Hughes.